Hey, welcome to Fire Engineering's Humpday Hangout and to our show, the issues and challenges in today's fire service. I'm Chief Rick Lasky, along with my co-host, buddy, and partner, Humpday Hangout pal, Assistant Chief from Louisville, Terry McGrath.
Good to see you, Chief.
Very good friends. How you doing, brother?
Good, good.
All right. Yeah, I know you've been busy. Did you hire your 20 guys yet, or whatever you're doing, or?
No, that's still about 12 months off. But we're in the process of building 2 stations. So one of them is for that. We got a truck being built right now. We got a brush truck being built right now. We're specing an ambulance right now. What else? And I'm sure I got to make lunch or something. So I don't know. There's a lot going on.
There's always a ton of stuff going on in Louisville. It's a great place, progressive fire department. You got some good bosses. How Chief T doing? Good.
Oh yeah, excellent.
Good.
Doing really well.
Good. All right. Hey, we got a great lineup for you again. Terry and I talked about this one a couple weeks ago. And first of all, before I forget, if you have any questions today, hit us on Twitter, or I'll be trying to check Facebook, but hit us on Twitter if you can. And don't forget to, if you have a question, we'll do our best to get to them. Sometimes can't get to them all. I've actually had a hashtag FE for fire engineering, FE Talk, hashtag FE Talk. So today, Terry and I are hanging out with some of our buds, some of our brothers, some good guys. A couple of them I go way back with. We've got Chief Sean Maloy for the Bedford Park, Illinois Fire Department, and his assistant, Deputy Chief Billy Thomas with us, as well as we've got Assistant Chief Don Davids from the Aurora, Illinois Fire Department. And welcome, guys.
Welcome,
Chief. Thanks for having us.
Oh no, I told Terry. I had the honor again to do the keynote and a breakout session at the iChiefs Haz-Mat conference in Baltimore in May, and I had to go back in time and talk about Bedford Park, and I used to sit across the street. I think the landmark's gone now, right?
It is.
Yeah, I used to sit across the street in the parking lot after working down at Justice and just stare at that station and go, God, one day I'm going to get to work there, and I couldn't wait to get on to be part of the Haz-Mat team and so on and so forth, because they actually did it. But always out in front with everything else like that. Before we move on, I just wanted to mention for our viewers and recognize somebody. We lost Chief Eddie Swatowski from up in Michigan recently. He was killed while he was at an accident. Just tragic. And we all started together. Billy, Sean, and I, and at Bedford Park. And I remember coming into the department I was working at before that, and there was a cake on a table, and it said, "Congratulations, Rick and Eddie." I'm like, okay, am I fired, or what's going on here? And he goes, "No, Chief Rubel called. We got hired in Bedford Park." And I'm like, cool. And it was incredible. And I told the story guys at the Haz-Mat conference. I actually had Eddie's. I had the story, and I had the IFSI, the Illinois Fire Service Institute's logo on the slide. And Wednesday night, while I was in my hotel room at the conference, is when Eddie was taken from us when he was killed. And obviously, I got the call. Billy Goldfeder called me like 2 in the morning to tell me. And before I did my talk, I changed out. I put his picture up there, and I told the story. We'll get into how all of us got into the Haz-Mat in a little bit, but how Eddie talked me into going to U of I, to the Fire Service Institute, for a frickin' Haz-Mat chemistry class for firefighters. And he's like, "Oh, it's cool." I'm like, "Look, dude, I'm a jock. I've never had chemistry. I don't know what that is." No, it'd be great. It's for firefighters. And I'm like, "Hey, cool." And one of my absolute heroes of my life, Bedford Park Lieutenant Bill Allen, longtime retired now, but what an incredible man. If you've been through any of my classes, you've heard me brag about him. I brag about him every class I teach and what he means to me. He went with like 30 years in a job. Everybody else was like 14 years old in the class. Guys, I'm telling you, I looked at Eddie. I said, "It's a good thing I don't have a gun, because what did you do to me? I'm in a class." I was, when you get mad at the instructor because you don't know what the hell he's talking about. And Kevin Smith was there from FDNY. He was killed on 9/11. And I was like, what the hell am I, we'd go back to the hotel to do our study groups. I'm like, I don't want to drink, because if I can't figure this shit out when I'm sober, what am I going to do if I have a couple drinks? Anyway, just an acknowledgement out to a great guy. I know, Sean, you guys posted some stuff in his memory. Taken from us, obviously, way too soon. So good guy, and well, we miss him. So
yeah, you're giving me goosebumps right now because you know, I known him my whole life. I grew up down the street from him, and that's a guy that loved the fire service and everything about it. And you know, it's unfortunate. It's a true tragedy, and yeah, we're all gonna miss him.
He's just, you know what, he was into training. He was into, you know, whatever he could get his hands in, you know, into and involved in a positive way in the fire service, and just great guy. We were firefighter paramedics together, and really, he actually received the Medal of Valor for his attempt to save Lieutenant Joe Samick at the Pleasant View Fire Department when he fell to the basement. The video I show in class, you'll see him, you know, steam burned, all, you know, beat up and everything after trying to get down to Joe. So we lost a good one. But before we get into talking a little bit about you know, everything going on that Terry wanted to talk to you about, Sean and Billy, about what, you know, happened at Bedford Park. Don, give us a little background on you. How about first? Let's talk about Aurora, because I know there's a couple Auroras out in the United States. Aurora, I know Aurora's been around a long time, and I always talk about Aurora, like Aurora, Rockford. You know, talk about Elgin. It's like, you know, there's those pockets of those just outside Chicago, like older, been around cities that do a lot of fire and everything else. But give us a little background about Aurora.
Yeah, you're right. There's a group of older cities that were the river cities and stuff. And Aurora, Joliet, Elgin, Waukegan, Rockford. Aurora is the second largest city in the state of Illinois. Our population is just a little over 200,000. We have a 205 person fire department. We have 9 stations. We cover 46 square miles. We have provided ALS ambulance transport service along with firefighting, Haz-Mat, tech rescue. Almost all the special teams, we probably have them covered. Being outside of Chicago, one of the bigger cities, we're probably one of the more active Haz-Mat or special teams. We have joined forces with a lot of the other little smaller towns in the county to make a Mavis Division Haz-Mat team. And I'm sure some of the viewers or you guys know what Mavis is. And Aurora hosts the Mavis Division 13 Haz-Mat team. So
Well, Don, real quick, let me interrupt you. Go ahead and explain, because I used to be part of that committee, but you know, we've got people from all over North America, Canada. Explain what Mavis is.
Mavis stands for Mutual Aid Box Alarm System, and its roots go back to Chicago in the 70s. If you know what like a still and box are, a box would be a confirmed fire or where you needed a lot more equipment and manpower. So they came up with a way of identifying what resources ahead of time would go to a specific area. So statewide, we continued that into breaking the state into what we call divisions. There's 102 counties in Illinois. There's currently 69 Mavis divisions. Division could be one city, which like Chicago is the only one that is their own division, or it could be as many as 10, 20, 30 smaller communities. We have a division down south, I think, that is 5 or 6 counties in it because of the geography and the resources down there. And we support those divisions with some training and some equipment for special teams. We support 38 level A Haz-Mat teams. We support 39 technical rescue teams. And we just started supporting in the last 3 or 4 years some water rescue, whether they're swift water or subsurface rescue. Chief Maloy and I have been on the Haz-Mat steering committee for many, many years. We were actually both co-chairs at the same time. And we try to support the teams and provide a kind of a similar cache of equipment to the teams so they have like capabilities in the event of a larger scale disaster.
Okay, like I said, I know you guys have been doing stuff for a long time. I mean, you know, and there's a lot of places out there that, you know, they do great. Maybe not as busy and all that so on and so forth, but Aurora's always been out there in front. And the Mavis thing has been huge. I mean, we realized that, again, after 9/11, so many things came about, but I'm a big believer in Mavis. We brought something of it down here in the Metroplex. Still have some good old boys that don't want to switch to like box cards and response cards and stuff like that. And I want to Billy, before I got to about the trade stuff, Terry, he mentioned something, you know, about what they're doing, how many different departments and everything going on with the different divisions and so on and so forth. We were talking, folks, to our viewers before we came on the air. I was talking with Terry about, Terry was one of the task force members with ATF for a long time with his explosives detection canine, his dogs, and has extensively worked with the feds with the Super Bowls and all-star games and everything else, the preparation. Okay, so Terry, now take us, Don's talking about, the MABUS divisions, getting the communities to come together. You got to see that, you were talking about in Glendale, right? When it was a Super Bowl, when you were out there for that one, about everything now, how they're doing it.
Yeah, so in that time of my career, I had the opportunity to work a lot of big events, 2 Super Bowls, so one in Glendale, one in here at Arlington, it's this, like many aspects of how we operate today, and the hazardous materials monitoring, detection, and prevention, if you will, is a large part of now what the security, what would be considered a normal security sweep, which years ago just was, you're looking for obviously explosives, guns, and things that an individual would perpetrate violence on individuals. But of course now that, like everything else, has broadened in scope. So the idea of using hazardous materials teams, and so, for example, in Arlington, when I was still working my canine and did sweeps at that stadium, and every single canine team that went out, you went as a team, and part of that team was radiological and chem bio monitoring individuals as part of their hazmat teams. But it's commonplace now.
Well, and again, like I said, after, I guess I keep saying after 9/11, so many things changed, which it did. What everything MABUS did in Illinois. By the way, I'm wearing my Blackhawk shirt, so I just want to point that out for my Chicago buddies. But after that, I mean, the program in Illinois, where at the drop of a hat, one phone call, being able to activate teams for just disaster management. I remember Katrina, it was like off they went with this caravan of everything to get down there with pretty much in the blink of an eye, when everybody else is stumbling, looking up phone numbers and making like 9 calls to get shit going and everything else. I know one of the things, and I want to jump at Billy here real quick with something, because I remember you and I almost, not in a good way, competing as to who could check the rigs the quickest.
And the most thorough.
Yeah. I mean, I used to love checking the box when I was a medic on the box. You know what I'm saying? Just, and that had back and forth with that rig when we got the new Haz-Mat rig and all that, just, but the hard part, I mean, I got into it because I told people all the time, I was tired of getting embarrassed. I'd go to calls, Haz-Mat calls, and people are looking at you, and I felt like the village idiot. I didn't know anything. So I'm like, I'm not gonna be that person anymore. I'm gonna get as many classes as I can. And through Bedford Park and what they do, all of a sudden, next thing you know, we're teaching all the ops classes, the tech classes. Billy, you know this, the pain and suffering you go through trying to keep a team engaged. Especially, I mean, there's Haz-Mat, and there's just sometimes, it's like when God, think about it, to our viewers. People come into firehouse. The guys come into firehouse all the time. Guys and gals will go, "Hey, Chief Maloy, we haven't had a good fire in like 3 months or 2 months. We haven't had a good job in a week or whatever," or something like that. Or if you're Aurora, we haven't had a good fire in 10 minutes. Or Louisville, for that matter. They run all the time. But you know what I'm saying? How do you keep them, Billy? I mean, what do you do to keep the guys and especially your team engaged?
Well, actually, I muted myself, unmuted myself, so you can still hear me now, right?
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, good. Actually, it is a challenge at times. 9/11 and the roles how Haz-Mat changed over the years, from what it used to be compared to what 9/11 brought, and then with all of the anthrax and then the ricin, and now we're getting into getting into the chemical and the biological warfare stuff. It really kind of posed some challenges, but sparked, for lack of a better term, really kind of a greater interest, because it was something new that we were, whether we by choice or not by choice, we were forced to learn about. Now the challenge is, of course, is a lot of the older guys, myself included, are kind of starting to, fade off and everything else. So there's some, newer, younger blood that we've got to bring into this, and, certainly keep the interest and the passion and things of that nature. The formal training up here is changing in Illinois. We've all been Haz-Mat 1, 2, and 3. Then it was, operations level and technician, and then it went to Tech A and Tech B, and now the technician level is changing to where it's basically just going to be a straight 80-hour program. So for those kids that are coming into it now, it's a greater challenge. There's a lot to learn. There's technology compared to when we first started. Holy cow, unbelievable. So I think the technology keeps these kids engaged. I can refer to them as kids now because I'm over 50, but that kind of stuff keeps them engaged. There's some really, really neat stuff we can do out there in the field as far as analyzing a product, and that's really kind of, I think, what keeps people, the spark alive.
Well, and I was amazed, and I know, Sean, you've tried to make it out there. Billy, I see you guys at conferences. Don, I know you're, progressively that way as well as a boss. To be able to see the stuff I see, like I just saw at the Haz-Mat conference. Chris Hawley, by the way, kind of heads that up, that whole coordinating. I don't know how he pulls it off. I don't know how Terry pulls off running Keep Nutrition Alive with the pipes and drums and autograph symposium. And then you got a guy doing it with the Haz-Mat. I was amazed. I was like a little kid walking around. When you said technology, I started thinking of all these things were flashing back, this stuff. And I'm going, God, I remember when Wayne Hansen put a computer in the Haz-Mat squad, and you had to be careful not to bump it, or, you'd be doing something. And, and now it's just, I have an app on my phone for figuring plumes. But you made me laugh because when you said, now it's switching 80 hours. Recently I was the interim chief in Trophy Club, Texas. And when the training captain was scanning all my certificates, he started going through all the Haz-Mat. I just handed him a folder because it was Haz-Mat 1, 2, and 3. Right. Then it was Haz-Mat awareness, Haz-Mat first responder, Haz-Mat technician, Haz-Mat, special operations specialist. And then it switched to Tech A, Tech B, and then Haz-Mat incident command. And then I had all the trainers. He's like, holy cow. I go, yeah, pretty cool, huh? I go, actually, those are all pretty much the same shit, so it was fun. But Sean, you've been heading up things for a long time there. Another one of my heroes that I brag about in class that actually, and it's these things that as you mature in your career, you realize there's mentors and people that you didn't really realize were true mentors and people because you didn't talk. They don't wear a name tag as mentor, but Chief Bob Rubel, I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't be in the fire service today, and that's why I say class wasn't for him, because he sat my ass down in the office once and with that loud booming voice chewed my ass out, kicked me out, and then called me back in a week later and did it again because I am half Italian, half Polish. It takes twice to send a message. And I say it all the time. I would not be here today doing what I'm doing. I'd be working at Subway or some shit if it wasn't for Bob Rubel. He was forward-thinking enough, Sean, to put, what I'm saying? And you had Mike Williams, the people that were just, again, that fought against the you Haz-Mat geeks and stuff. But Bob Rubel was one of those people, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, you were here in the early 80s when he was working with John Eversole and they started putting together at Haz-Mat. And you talk about all these classes you went to, and you remember they were teaching this stuff. Again, Billy Allen that worked on that when they took the guidelines and actually made the tech class before there was a tech class, and you were part of that. So, and that was because we had to down here. It's like going to Jewel for chemicals around Bedford. They're all over the place. So we really had to do that. And they built a great system out here, working with Chief Eversole with Chicago, working with them guys together. And, you got to work with guys like Gene Ryan that I still see out there doing some work. So, the south side of Chicago is a great place for Haz-Mat starting back in the early 80s.
Well, in Bedford Park, it was like the playground for that because, if it wasn't Barton Chemical, it was Nelco Chemical, it was Corn Products, it was 3M. I mean, the list goes on. If there's a chemical, it's in Bedford Park, and they'll spill that shit all the time there and everything else. I want to mention something, guys. Don, you obviously had a relationship with him. Just John Eversole. Chief Eversole, it's one of the many scholarships, one of the big ones they give out to ICHES conference each year. John Eversole, for our viewers, is again one of my heroes, and I do not do a hazmat presentation without showing his picture and mentioning him. Incredible pioneer in hazardous materials. I met him when he was a lieutenant with Chicago, and he worked his way up to district chief, Fort Trumpets, in charge of their hazmat team. He's a legend, but more importantly, he's just a great man. We miss him. My wife adores his wife. But I want to tell a story, and I know Billy, I'm almost positive, Sean, you've been through it. Don, I don't know if you experienced. Terry, you'll appreciate this, because this is something that my good buddy, my good friend Terry McGrath would do to me. First time I walked into my first hazmat awareness class, 80, whatever it was, 2, 3, whatever. It was North Palis was holding the class. I walk in, and John Eversole's kind of a tall guy, and he's a lieutenant at the time, Chief Eversole, lieutenant at the time. And everybody, you're walking in, I always sat in the front row, and they had that desk, they had that like table that you put all your stuff on to teach, and then there were the tables, kind of small room. And there was an empty Hinckley and Schmidt. Do they still sell water there? Hinckley and Schmidt? Yeah, a lot of different. For those of you that are like wherever you live in the country or Canada, whatever, watching, gigantic, the water bottles you put on the coolers. And this was a plastic one. And Bill, you're smiling because you know where I'm going with this. He'd have this empty bottle sitting, and you walk in, and he'd come in, he goes, who are you? He said, I'm Rick Lasky, I'm a volunteer with John. And he'd take that bottle, the empty bottle by the neck, and he'd go, boom, welcome to class. He put it back down, and at one point we're still getting coffee, and he knocked it off the table. It bounced, doom, 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 doom. And anyway, this thing's sitting there, and then he starts the class, and every now and then it was like it was his pointer, and he'd pick it up and he'd hold it above his head. He did this and all that, and then he goes, look, and he's talking about awareness, and I want to talk to all you really smart firefighters here that go to the hardware store to buy your flashlight. And you duct tape it together. And then you walk into my explosive atmosphere. And Billy, remember, and Terry, this is you, but this is you to a T, all right? He takes a match, lights it above this empty bottle that he's been throwing all over the frickin' room. And remember, Billy, a blue flame shot out of the top of this thing, knocked the ceiling tiles out. I shit my pants, I'm telling you right now. And I'm like, what the heck? Remember, he said, was a settling site. He used to shoot just a shot in there, and it used to stay in there because it couldn't come out. And that was his whole point about wake up and pay attention. It's the Jack McCaslin paper cup, Harold Barden on the stove thing. And he was like my hero from that point. He blew stuff up in the classroom in front of me. McGrath, that's something you would do. You would do that. That's your like, what can I do chemistry wise? Let me spray a gas in this bottle and blow it up in front of people to get their attention. It was incredible. John Eversole, though, was just, one of those people that he always had time for you. He always had time for you, and you always learned something with him.
Great.
Always. Mm-hmm. So, want to throw this out there. Sean, being a chief of department, funding, grants, things, whatever, associations. Let's talk about the politics and what it takes to keep the team alive, man.
Yeah, definitely. It takes a big commitment from people trying to run a team. And down here, as Don was talking about Mavis, we're Division 21. We host our hazmat team out of Bedford, and we put a lot of time and effort because you always got to be on top of things. You got to be checking your monitors, making things are calibrated, making sure things get sent in when they need to be sent in. Making sure that the guys have their competencies together, getting guys in the suit. I mean, getting suit time's hard. But that was one of the great things. And I'll segue over to Don with it because he was involved with most of the procurement. With Mavis as our statewide, after 9/11, we were able to get a lot of federal grants and a lot of money came through the state. As Don said, we're at, I think, 39 hazmat teams, and we were able to spend a lot of money with these teams so that if we had a large scale event that, we could bring 10 hazmat teams in here and we had the same monitors, like the hazmat ID that we've got across the state. You could pick up a sample, anything, put it on there, and it'll tell you what it is, which, that blew our minds when the salesman first brought that out. But yeah, that was really you know, to be able to have the organization behind us, some great guys on the committee we did a lot of research, we'd bring things forward, and we get the grant funding because, you know, it costs you, every hazmat squad's probably got, you know, $500,000 of equipment sitting on it, if not more. And a lot of places just can't do that. And we're real lucky in Illinois to have the leadership to put a system together like this where, you know, we've got 39 hazmat teams that are trained, they're equipped, they've got everything they need. You know, and then after that, we got to where we started doing our trying to get the drills together and bring 10 teams and say, here's a scenario. We do it down at U of I at the Institute and try to get all the teams to work together because we'd always try to have common SOGs on how we're doing things, you know, and sometimes you saw, you know, 5 teams that they knocked it out and they were great. You know, sometimes teams struggled, but it gave us goals to shoot for. And the system was just, you know, you couldn't ask for more because we knew that the funding was there from the leadership of MABUS, and they gave us the tools as the hazmat guys to really get down and do what we had to do. Don, I know you bought a lot of that stuff. I mean, you know exactly how much the grants were. It was huge. And, you know, the amount of teams that we put together in a short time was pretty incredible.
Yeah, it actually was, Sean. We were lucky that Illinois decided when they started getting federal Homeland Security grant money that they would kind of establish a mechanism through the Illinois Terrorism Task Force to fund or to get those funds down to the local end users. And we've been a beneficiary of a lot of funds that were utilized for a lot of different things. I don't think most hazmat teams, you know, maybe Aurora and Bedford and Chicago and some of the big ones would afford a hazmat ID or an area array on their own. But those higher end things, you know, we've been able to standardize that across the state. And we have a lot of teams that could come in the event of a larger scale incident to be the backup for somebody or to help nationally if we were needed. So Chief Maloy and I have been involved for a long time. We're still involved with it. We're stepping into some different roles as part of the elected leadership team for MABUS, but we look forward to trying to support that and continue that and maybe even enhance it.
In your area of the country, are y'all doing any kind of cost recovery for some of these? I mean, it's gaining a little traction down here, and it only seems to gain traction for things like hazmat. So like a spill on the highway is a prime example, because I know the private company, when they're contracting private companies, they're billing insurance. And of course, as people understand that hopefully that financial reimbursement is available. But is that something that's prevalent up in your area of the country?
Yeah, for us, we've had a state spiller pay act or whatever it would be called. We actually have a county one, and then the city of Aurora has a spiller pay ordinance. So within certain parameters, as far as a resident business, you know, we try to recover anything above and beyond our routine costs. And then if we end up into like a backfill situation where we're calling in extra personnel, then we might even try to recover those costs. Now, sometimes it ends up in litigation and it takes a long time or it gets whittled down. But I think if you can document your cost and your consumables within a reasonable amount and a prudent other individual would think that's warranted, we've had pretty decent luck with most spiller pay requests.
Well, and what, you know, one of the things I want to jump back at too is, you know, is with the laws and the ordinances and so on and so forth is when you guys were talking a little bit, and Sean was going about, you know, the support, the leadership, you know, which is what it always takes as progressive leaders. Speaking of progressive leaders, I want to apologize. I didn't mean to cuss. I'm sorry. I was cussing a little bit there too much. And it's been a long weekend and a long night, and I'm sorry I was tired. So I apologize for that to our listeners. But anyway, you know, Terry, you saw this. It was like right after 9/11. In order to impress their city managers, fire chiefs in the Metroplex ran out to buy their old canister man. Nobody got on the same page. Nobody did like a MABUS would and actually talked and said, let's agree and let's buy the same stuff. You know, what you guys did planning wise to have the, you know, the casks, you know, the things positioned at different spots. They did. Everybody bought different stuff. So if you went somewhere, God forbid, and we've used that stuff a lot, but God forbid, nobody had the same things. Everybody's hurried to get out there and do that. One of the things I want to throw at all of you, and again, I guess two-part. One is, what does it take to be that progressive boss? You just both, Don and Billy, you were talking about what it took training-wise to keep the guys engaged, and now handing the baton off to someone, to the newer, younger, the future all-stars, if you will. And Don, you and Sean were talking about, what Mavis has done. Terry, you talked about working together. There's obviously got to be, number one, what does it take to have that progressive leader or leadership pool to pull from? And number two, to get away from the "it'll never happen here." That was actually one of my slides in a PowerPoint presentation. It's like line of duty desk where people say, we've been there for the investigations and for the funerals. They go, "Well, God, we never thought it would happen here." And, it only happens in Chicago or LA or New York, where no, it happened. You pull the numbers out. Sadly, it does happen in some of those large cities, but the majority of the fire service, it happens, with us. How do you get past that? It'll never happen here. That's one of them. And let's get back to creating that progressive leadership pool. I'll throw that to everybody.
You know what, Chief? One of the things we've done is on the committee level, we've tried to identify younger, enthusiastic members and get them on board as maybe a assistant in a special project. Chief Maloy and I did this with a couple of guys probably 5-7 years ago. Bring them on board as an assistant in a special project, kind of try to get them interested in being part of the committee and helping make some of those decisions. And then hopefully you'll be able to retain them and have them become part of your leadership team when some of us older guys start to move on to other positions or whatever.
Oh,
I muted. Sorry. Billy made a good point about handing off the baton. Terry, Louisville has been always aggressive when we were working together as a team, you, me, and Tim, about succession planning with the diversity team. And now Louisville's about the same size, couple hundred firefighters. They're hiring and building and doing stuff. And else, it's a very busy fire department. Terry, you had the same thing, the succession planning. How you've got the dive team. That's easy. Guys all want to be on the boats and all that stuff and everything else, and the truck. But to get people there to, I want to be an FTO. You've got all those division chiefs positions. How do you keep people, or what are you doing there in Louisville to engage and you know what I'm saying, to reach down and pick the next Jeremy Jones, the next Gary Apple, that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, I think from my perspective, I always like to find the people that show the passion. And that there was a book that was written about Southwest Airlines, and one of the interesting things that it had said about in there was that their philosophy was basically, we need to hire the right people and we'll train them how to do the job. And at the time that I read it, I'm thinking from a standpoint, well, I mean, that's great, but you got to know how to fly a plane, and you can't just be okay at it. You got to be pretty good at it. But I think from basically what they're saying is that they're trying to identify qualities in people that translate into the everyday of what you're doing. And I think that's important. We have, like every organization I'm sure represented on this panel, we have firefighters and we have employees. And I think you identify which one's which. The firefighters are the ones that I want to go after. And, I think that any school of management will tell you that people want responsibility. And I think that's probably more true with firefighters or police officers than with any other group of employees in an organization. So give them responsibility. And you know what? Let's start off like you were identified. Get them involved in a project. That's perfect. I want to show that I'm going to give you some stuff to do, but in turn, I want you to show me that you're going to put the time, effort, and energy into doing it, and that's going to translate into the next thing. We've got a captain that's heading up our apparatus spec committee, and that's a big undertaking. So
millions of dollars.
Well, yeah, but we also want that person. It's not just this truck; it's the next engine, and it's the next two engines, and so there's a lot of people that will stand there and say, "I want to do that," but first and foremost, do you really want to do it? Because it sounds good, but there's a lot of late nights where you're sitting at your dining room table reading specs. And so I think it's just, identifying, you've got to start identifying people. And I'm not I'm not a proponent of rank. I don't think rank has anything to do with this. People are passionate at 35 years and they're passionate at 12 months, but find those people that truly, this is when you walk in the door in the morning, you're looking to accomplish something. And I think that's key, is identifying those people.
Well, that was Bill Allen. Here's a guy, like I said, that had 30 years that we're in 2 weeks in Champaign, Illinois, going through a Haz-Mat chemistry class. If anybody had the right and earned the right to say, you know what, let the younger guys and gals do that, not me, that was that person. But and I think it's so key. Everybody here has pretty much hit on it. Billy, one of the things that you and I loved, and Sean as well, Billy and I were on the same shift. Sean was on B shift, was the fact that we were firefighters and that our boss, Bob Rubel, trusted us with millions of dollars in apparatus and equipment. We got to check out at the time the coolest hazmat squad in the country, the coolest hazmat unit with all. And I mean, if you wanted it, he'd buy it for you. You could find enough stuff in catalogs for hazmat response that Bob Rubel could buy quick enough. You know what I'm saying? And Billy, that was the cool part, was like Terry said, the area assignments that we had a lieutenant we reported to. Mike usually was, but you know what I'm saying? It was pretty cool for you and I as young firefighters, Sean, to be able to, a lot of places unless you're anointed, they don't let you do that stuff. It was pretty cool to be able to do that.
We, one of the things that Terry had mentioned, as far as identifying who those people are, I mean, we all got those people. And, to me, the greater challenge is you've got the people. All you need to do is just give them a little bit to work with, and they will take the ball and they will run with it. To me, the greater challenge is that when you get these quality people, they're perfectly content though where they're at. They don't want to be that leader. They will bend over backwards. They will do the job 10 times over. They will sit at the dining room table. They'll stay up all night doing this stuff. But I also believe that for as many great leaders as we need in the fire service, we need that many great firefighters as well. Sometimes pushing a person up the line isn't necessarily the smarter thing to do, because you need that good firefighter. We need, the L Hills and the Bob Gleiks, to keep the blue shirts and, in tow and stuff. But yeah, there's many times I think about, holy cow, I came home from work exhausted the next morning and we never even turned a wheel. It was from, sitting out in the app room, Bill Lester, smoking cigarettes and solving all the world's problems and everything. And then, like you said, going to a Bob Rubel the next day, going to the chief and saying, hey, listen, we could use this, we could use that, we could use this, we could use that. And he'd get it for us. We still have those people today. To me, the greater challenge is what do we do to encourage them to want to move up the line to be our replacements?
Well, and let's throw that out. That's a great question, Sean and Don and Terry. What do we do? I mean, I'm a big believer. Pete from Fire Engineer and I, we're going to be kicking out the. I did it years ago, then I did it again, and we're going to go bring it back. A lot of people had asked my Mentor Monday program, talking about the vital importance of mentorship, of being a mentor. Those kinds of things. How do we do that? How do we develop that culture to get people, to step up and want to be the next Billy Thomas, Sean Maloy, I'm saying, Don David, I'm saying, I looked at people and I said, I want to be like that guy or gal. I want to be like Jack McCass. I want to be like Bill Allen. How do we create that atmosphere?
Yeah, it's really hard to get that going with some guys. And, Rick, I can go back, 20 some years when you were leaving here. Conversation we had in the kitchen about finishing formal education. I went out, I finished my bachelor's degree and went on and finished a master's degree. And honestly, conversation we had about it, about moving forward. You were a fireman leaving here, going into Darien. I was a fireman, but that was still, it's those conversations that you have with people to be able to strike that tone and, give some honest advice to people so that they could go home and think about it and say, yeah, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. And that's what we got to do. When I'm out teaching the fire officer classes, there's so many guys that, I never met before. And then you get to know them because they're going through tactics 1, tactics 2 and leadership. And you build these these relationships and you talk about these types of things with them, and you could see where it really sinks in. And then you start where, you know, you keep in contact with email. You know, it's the interpersonal relationships that you build with some guys. Some people are there and they'll take right to it. There's a lot of people that, you know, like Bill was saying, I'm happy being a fireman, leave me alone. And you'd be like, dude, you are cut out to be a company officer. You need to be taking lieutenant tests. You need to be looking at being a battalion chief, you know, and advancing in your departments.
Well, and you know what, and Don, you see it where you're at, I'm sure. I mean, and I say all the time, I was very proud to have been part of Louisville for 12 years and working with Terry and Tim and everybody. Bedford Park, I'm very proud, you know, to have been a part of that organization. We all have, it's like I'm saying, there's a mixed bag. You could place faces right now and you're up here and go, okay, this guy, the Bill Allen, the Bill, you know, you mentioned Bill Lester, Billy, they were always cutting edge, thinking about what's next, how can we do this, so on and so forth. And then you had the complete opposites. And sometimes young firefighters end up attaching themselves to the wrong boxcar, if you will, on the train. And they realize later I had to make up for some lost ground because I thought being on the shift with the goofs was the place I wanted to be. And I didn't like that after a while because I'm like, you know, we're being picked last. And I think part of it is appealing to the competitiveness of the fire service, to the firefighters, you know, to get them to that point where they want to be, to create the desire. But it takes those leaders. Let's talk to the leaders. It takes those leaders who, you know, Stephen Covey used to talk about in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, your circle of influence. And it's that positive circle of influence, you know, that after a while, they just have this ability. If you're a fence sitter, they're going to suck you into the positive camp. You know, there's always that opposite circle going the other way, but you know, the positive circle is much bigger. It truly is. And it takes those bosses that are willing. What are we doing in Aurora, Illinois? You know, another big department, big metro department, if you will, a busy one. I mean, it's not like we're waiting for, you know, that next fire a year. They're talking busy fire department. What are we doing there to get people engaged and, you know, get them pumped up?
You know what, Chief, I'm going to have to mute this because there's going on a call right now. So
go figure.
Yeah.
You know, it's those pesky emergency calls. You know what? You know, Terry, we talked about this before. We should just put the phones on call forwarding when we're doing the show, so there's no, you know, tell them that they can't call right now. But
yeah,
no.
I apologize. I can't turn them off.
That's all right. That's all right. But.
You know, one of the things we've tried, and we've done this for quite a while, and it's a long-term project. You know, you don't see the results for probably a decade or longer. But we assign a mentor to every new recruit. While they're still in the fire academy, we just had 19 people start. They came on shift July 1st. So all 19 of those people got assigned. You know, we had 19 firefighters who said they'd be mentors for these new recruits. So that's kind of somebody for them to emulate, to follow in their steps, to ask their questions, to maybe nudge them right, you know, to the right side of the line or something. And then we try to do the same thing with officers. We support our officers by going to officer classes. We do have a formal officer mentoring program. We do encourage guys to take classes, and we support that and stuff. But some of those things take a long time. You're not going to see that in a year. You're not going to see it in 5 years. Sometimes you might not see it for 10 or 20 years. But I think all you can do is provide positive role models and the opportunities for them to emulate them or to head the right direction. And I truly believe that a lot of firefighters can move that direction and do very well.
Hey, Don, do you guys have any shortage of your senior guys wanting to be mentors? You know, there's guys that'll just say, you know, we talked about it years ago, and it was, you guys be like, hey, you know what, it's not for me. You know, how do you suck these senior guys into really sharing their knowledge and experience?
You know what, Sean, I think it falls into like the middle category. The guys with more than 5 but less than 15 years on seem to be the ones that kind of remember that and want to be the mentors. We do have some guys that are mentors with, you know, 20, 25 years on our senior privates. And we're pretty traditional fire department, so we have like a barn boss yet. You know, one guy each day in a station has a red rag in his back pocket, and he's not the officer, but he's the guy that's been here the longest, and that should usually signify some additional knowledge, and maybe he's due a little respect and stuff. So we try to stick to the traditional things that do well for us, and then modify them with some of the things we've learned along the way. But this day and age, sometimes it's hard to engage people because there's so many other things going on.
Oh, and that's it. We've got so many, you know, I told my old man not too long ago, I said, I would have loved to have been a training officer when you were a firefighter. You know, what did you guys do back then? You know, I mean, you know, you weren't even doing first aid yet. You're just getting into that, running around in station wagons and that, and, you know, Cadillac ambulances and so on and so forth. There's so many different areas tugging at the time frame and trying to fit it all in to get it done. We got a lot of volunteers that watch this show. It's even more difficult, challenging for them when you're working with drill nights and meeting nights and that. I guess my next big thought, I'm sitting while you guys are talking, is, you know, we're all big picture people. I'm a big believer in thinking big. Think big, think big. Think big at a fire, think big. You know, you won't get caught. You know, you won't get caught short. Think big. How do you get that kind of thought process about thinking big out there that, you know, like I said, it'll never happen here kind of stuff, and get past the, oh, you're just the sky is falling people. I used to hear that. You know, we had someone we worked with in Bedford Park that he used to say, oh, there you are with the what ifs again. And I said, I thought we're the what if people. I thought we have water on a pumper. It's not on it for ballast. It's, you know, it's what if we have to fight a fire, and what if we have to use the air, what if we have to, you know, I guess that's the question for you with the leadership here is, how do you create that? How do you create that whole, guys, we need to be thinking big picture?
Yeah, I like being open-minded. You know, I think that if you're going to see big picture, you got to be open-minded. I like to tell these guys, be creative. When they come in with some creative idea, I could tell they put thought into it. The wheels are spinning, you know, it gets my wheels spinning. And, you know, you give them a little bit of support, and you can share that vision and kind of turn them loose. You know how firemen are. Don't tell a fireman he can't do something. If he thinks he can do it, he's going to find a way. And we've seen it both good and bad. They're going to find a way. But, you know, I think the creativity and having an open mind to letting these folks run with some of their ideas, that's how you get the buy-in from the troops that, you know, hey, you're behind them. They can do things and they can make themselves better, and they keep chugging along in their career.
Well, Terry, let me throw this at you, buddy. You do the hiring, you know, you're overseeing that. You helped us in Trophy Club. You and Mark spin things around there with our process. Trophy Club, Texas, another great fire department. You and I've talked about this, about getting them on board from day one, like whether it's in the academy. You know, I just had this conversation about mental health issues. You know, we need to be coaching, we need to be training the firefighters in the academy that it's okay to ask for help, that it's, you know, we have EAPs, it's okay, that it's not normal for a person to see what a firefighter sees, and then put all your personal crisis and stuff in there too, and that, you know what, bucket overflows after a while. Terry, we've talked about that. You're doing things in Louisville right from the very get-go. You know, we used to give the talk in the interview and so on and so forth to get them on board, mentoring processes and so on and so forth, the mentor book and that, just to get them to understand why they're there, that this isn't television. You know, share some of that.
Yeah, so, you know, I kind of go back to the statement I made earlier about, you know, firefighters and employees, and Chief Scott Thompson's the one that Thompson laid that on me one day, and I laughed at it in the context of what we were talking about. But there's a lot of truth to that, and so that's something I try to say very early on to people, is that we are trying to hire firefighters. I don't want an employee. Which one are you? And more often than not, you got to kind of get a puzzled look by people, because it takes them off guard. But it's almost like, you know, if you wait 5 or 10 seconds, it kind of sinks in, and then they think, oh, okay, you know, this is a career, and thus there, you know, it's not a. My son just started sacking groceries at Kroger, and I mean, literally, he can't wait to get there. He tells me all the rules. He will detail the process of retrieving carts from the parking lot. I mean, he's absolutely.
Did he talk about Bob? Did he talk about Bob? That's the box on the bottom or whatever that they have to look for. My son told me about, so when people are checking out, you don't miss it.
Oh, yeah. But and so in all honesty, it's funny because if I pick him up and drive home for 20 minutes, this is what I listen to, and he's absolutely thrilled about it. And so you know what, to me, you go back to I want that energy. First of all, I need that energy because at what I do all day and what probably most of us are doing all day is sitting at a desk and poring over. Unfortunately, you get all the negative stuff, and then you're dealing with budgets, and then you're dealing with a complaint or a problem and broken down whatever. So the energy, the excitement, and I think the worst thing you can do at the top, and this is the person that's running a hazmat team, suck that energy out of somebody, and you have truly just done more harm for not just a person that comes in with an idea, with a passion in hazardous materials. And so you do something to squash that, and there's a good chance you've ruined that for the rest of you could ruin it for the rest of his career. And so I think and Chief, you used to make this analogy about when your kids drew a picture and you don't look at it and go, what the hell is that? What are you doing? You're 2 years old. Can't you use a crayon? You don't. You talk it up. You're excited about it. You put it on the fridge and you absolutely point to it every day and tell them, look how awesome that is, and you did great or whatever. And as simplistic as that sounds, that's truly the way you've got to have some of that. I've got to have a lot of that, probably a lot more than I show on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's part of the challenge, and that's something that you need to convey to these people. This is a serious business, and there is a high price of failure in this line of work. So we're going to do everything we can to keep you from failing, to keep us from failing. But at the same time, we want fun, we want energy, we want excitement. We're going to do our job, take care of each other, and we're all going to work towards a common goal, and all the sort. And those are the things I think that are perfect in a textbook, in a class, and a motivational seminar. But are we truly, living by that?
And that's a great point. That's a great point. Like I said, Sean talked about pursuing your higher education, and I was I was a huge believer in that. And that's why when Columbia Southern asked me if I would help promote the You Can, You Will, because people are like, all right, why? I'm already into my career. What I'm saying, it's never too late. It's never too late to improve yourself. It's never too late to go out and attend another class. It's never too late. Again, go back to Bill Allen. I'm getting ready. We're going to be in August in Tulsa for our FDIC advisory board meeting. I tell this story sometimes in class about you're never too old, you're never too experienced to stop training and learning. Like Terry, like you said, Alan Brunacini, our godfather, the godfather of the fire service, Chief Alan Brunacini, Bruno, myself, and Chief Bobby Halton were on our way from Tulsa to Rogers, Arkansas to do a program. And it's a several-hour drive, and we were going to do it right before an FDIC advisory board meeting. And Bruno was sitting in the back behind me. This is right after 48 years with Phoenix, the godfather of the fire service, if you will. If anyone deserves a chance or a moment or a break from training, it's Chief Brunacini. And we're the whole trip, he's tapping behind the shoulder, and he's going, he's handing me his phone. Rick, look at this. Read this article. Look at this fire. Look at this smoke. And I'm like, and after a while, it was almost comical because, like, if anyone deserves the right to just take 10 minutes off from training, it's him. But he does it, and then it clicked. That's why he's where he's at. That's why he's accomplished where he's at, because movers and shakers do that. Movers and shakers stay connected, stay cutting edge, stay with it. So I think that's huge. Hey, we've got a few minutes left before we got to sign off. Let's do this real quick. And Terry and I always have a question for our guest guys, but let's hit this first. This is another thing Terry and I do with folks. Throw it to Don first. New coming down the pipe as we're closing things out here. What's new coming down in Aurora, and what do you see coming on the hazmat front? There's something new.
Oh, Aurora's, we're in the process of building a replacement fire station for one of our older stations on the west side. It's been a long time since we built a new station. We've got foundation walls. We anticipate being in that in December. We have a new truck coming this fall, which, doesn't happen every year, so we're excited about that. Mabus Hazmat teams, we're just getting into trying to get to the next generation of the FTIRs. Chief Maloy referenced that we own 44 Hazmat IDs. They're about 10 or 12 years old, so we're looking at the replacement technology for that. It'll be a little tougher this time because the grant funds are a little tougher to get, but we think the committee and MABUS are capable, and we want to move our teams forward a little bit.
Very cool. Sean, Chief Maloy.
Oh, you know, I tell you what would be big for me is if I could get all my troops back on the line. You got a lot of injuries right now, so that's kind of beating us up. But yeah, Bill and I have been talking. One of our hot topics is looking at a. You know, we've always been a snorkel department here, and they're, you know, no longer officially a snorkel. And we're starting to look at the Rosenbauer, what they call the Cobra, I think. And, you know, so that we can get a replacement for that. You know, it's a great tool. And, you know, we're still a year out, but that's one of the big things we're looking at.
Well, and I know I have the ornaments. Any progress on the old snorkel?
Yeah, you know, Rick, a lot of guys ask me that. And, going back when, you know, there was some mergers and some going out of business things, and we've lost track of it a little bit. You know, it went out to, oh, gosh, can't remember which company it was. Bill remember. Schmiel. You know, and then they kind of got bought out, and it was at their body shop. So we got some feelers out trying to find it because, you know, a lot of these salesmen, they move from job to job. So, you know, the intent was the guy that owned Schmiel wanted to fully restore the whole thing. And, you know, I wish I had an answer for that right now because we're all dying to see it when it gets done.
Well, I think it sounds like a road trip. We're going to go out there. We're going to track this thing down and figure out where it's at.
Yeah.
Hey, Billy, what do you see coming down the pike here, buddy?
Whatever Sean says, Rick. I'm just fitting in here. That's all. Fill in the blanks. That's all. Whatever he says.
Cut it out. You're doing a good job, brother. I couldn't do it without you behind me. Believe me. You know.
Thank you.
Billy, if someone want to get a hold of you, they had a question, and I'll throw this at all three of you. They wanted you maybe to come out and teach for them, or they just said, "Look, I got a question. We're putting a team together, or we're revising our team, or from your perspective, or whatever." What's a great way for them to get a hold of you? Would it be email?
Who, me? Yeah.
What would that be? Throw your email out there, buddy.
Oh, wthomas@bedfordparkfd.org.
Perfect. Chief Maloy, Sean?
Yeah, you know what? Email SMALOY, 1L, everybody, at bedfordparkfd.org. I'm also on Twitter. I get a lot of kicks out of Twitter. So it's at Chief Maloy.
and you do a great job with it too. I mean,
I'm a little slow. The kids had to coach me, you know, but
Terry helps me. Terry gets frustrated because if he sees my phone ringing on his phone, he's like, "Oh, what's he want now?" You know, Terry's the only guy I know that the Geek Squad from Best Buy calls him for advice. So, but it's always good that way. Don, if they want to get a hold of you, buddy.
Yeah, probably my Aurora email is ddavids, DAVIDS, @aurora-il.org. Be happy to answer any questions about MABUS or Aurora or Chief Maloy.
Perfect. Terry, you got any closing thoughts, bud, before we
No, you know, Chief, the last year after that horrific event in Dallas when those police officers were killed, Chief David Brown made a statement that he basically said, you know, the police department is being asked to do too much. And, you know, we're if you got a dog problem, you call the police. You got a neighbor problem, you call the police. You got a kid problem, you call it. So, you know, it was a pretty powerful and extremely truthful statement, but there's a lot of what that said to me that I equate to Haz-Mat now, because it is the catch-all now, and the fire department's the catch-all for everything. It is all across the United States. And so, you know, it was funny one time we had an individual that called us whose dog got their foot stuck in a drain in their sink. And we sent a crew out to get but one of the councilmen, I got right on Twitter. And so we got some nice, you know, press out of the whole deal. And I like to do that, a nice, positive, feel good story at the end of the day. But one of the city councilmen was asking us questions about that. Like, why didn't they call animal control? And I said, well, they certainly can, but how are they going to get it off of there? And I go, look, you know, there isn't it's what we do. And when people need help, they call. And to me, nowadays, with the way things are, right? So you get an email in your, or email, you get mail in your mailbox and it's got a white powder on it. And so who are you going to call? You call the post office. Good luck there. But, so I think the statement, basically, and that is the absolute catch-all. And that's why I think, to me, in talking about hazardous materials teams, it's only going to get busier. It's only going to get more complicated. And there is no other alternative, right, Chief? You always say that, they called 911. We don't call 912. So this is it. So, I think this is probably a still somewhat overlooked area of service that is rendered, especially by organizations that don't have a lot invested in it. For instance, Louisville, we don't. We offer up community services. Our community service is the dive team when we rely on another department to provide hazmat. So we're not as up to speed as we should be in today's culture and the events that are going on. So, and that's something that has to be addressed, across the country, I'm sure.
Well, I think that comes through the progressive leadership we were talking about today with the folks we had on the show today. Guys, I can speak for Terry. We can't thank you enough for jumping on board with us today. Truly appreciate what you do. I said it 3 years ago when I did the keynote at the Haz-Mat conference with our chiefs. I just walked up to the podium and said, "Hello, my name is Rick Lasky, and I am a hazmat geek." And I was just like, those are the kind of people I want to hang with, people who are forward thinkers. Terry, you were just talking about, the people that are progressive. They're the ones that, Sean, you said, go after the classes. Billy, we're talking about who's the next Bill Thomas? Who's the next person that's going to take the baton and run with it and be sitting here? We talk about with FDIC all the time and with the magazine. Who's the next Bobby Hall, the next John Salka, the next Mike Dugan? First of all, it's just not going to fold up and go away. But who are those people? And if the folks like the progressive leadership we're talking about, we've talked about, and the people here with us today, if we don't do that stuff, it's not going to happen. I did want to mention something because I've mentioned a couple of times. If you're curious at all about the iChiefs Hazmat Conference they host every year in Maryland and Baltimore, it's incredible. If you're in the hazmat, you need to go. You need to go. If you're in the hazmat, you need to go. The email address for Chris Hawley, he's the gentleman that coordinates it all. He's been doing it for years. Is C Hawley, and that's Hawley. So C Hawley, HM for hazmat at gmail.com. So give Chris a holler if you're curious at all. Terry's email is easy, tmcgrath at citylouisville.com, aka Elroy Jetson. My good partner and very, very good friend. I'm at 5alarm leadership at gmail.com. Guys, can't thank you enough. Billy, Sean, Don, thank you so much for coming on the show with us and sharing your wisdom and your experience and your thoughts.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, hang in there. When we go off, guys, hang with us a little bit. Hey, our next, Terry mentioned it, and I bet you again, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and the web, so hit us on those sites if you need to. Our next show date is August 16th. Again, you can catch, we mention this every time, pretty much every Wednesday, you catch some great shows. Fire Engineering, Firefighter Nation, Fire Apparatus, all of it. Fire Rescue Magazine are all cutting edge, forward. Get the apps, put the apps on your phone. If you don't have, if you want to stay involved in the fire service, if you want to be the person that can sit at the kitchen table or on drill night and spew out and spout off the stuff that's going on, that stay connected to fire engineering and the whole Penwell team, they'll do it for you. So again, every Wednesday, noon central, catch some great shows here. The radio shows every night. We never close out the show without a couple of comments that Terry and I are very passionate about. And that's please keep the men and women who are serving the armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. And remember, never forgetting means never forgetting. Be safe, all. God bless you.